Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Farrelly. I'm a geologist and director with Aurum Exploration Services. The title of my talk today is the Applying Experience, the Key to Exploration Success within the MENA region. A brief outline of the talk. I'll give you a quick introduction to Aurum. We'll talk about some of the keys to success, and then I'll develop that in some MENA area case studies in which Aurum has been involved. Who are Aurum? We were founded in Ireland in 2002. We have offices in Ireland and also in Toronto in Canada. We employ around 30 personnel, including 23 geologists, of whom 5 are principal geologists with a combined experience of in excess of 130 years. We specialize in provision of international mineral exploration services, and we provide an adaptable and flexible service to meet our clients' requirements. Our business areas include mineral exploration from grassroots through to advanced and up to mining environments. We also help develop exploration programs and projects for our clients. Who are our clients? They include major mining houses such as Teck, Anglo-American. We've also worked for the Madden Group. Elsewhere, we worked for mid-tiered and junior companies listed on various stock exchanges globally. We also work for private exploration and pre-IPO companies to help them develop their exploration programs. We also work for investment communities doing due diligence and project assessments. And we also work for government departments in various jurisdictions. The type of services we provide ranges from desktop studies all the way up to mine site exploration. It can range from target generation to putting crews to do exploration on the ground for our clients, all the way up to competent person reporting. This graphic shows where we've worked in the world previously, and as you can see, we have quite a global footprint. We've worked in many areas internationally, particularly in Africa. We've recently opened an office in Canada, from which we hope to increase our exposure to the South American market. We see the MENA area as being a very significant growth area for exploration in the next 5 years, and we hope that the next time we show you this graphic, you'll see a lot more red in the MENA area. The commodities we look for base metals. We also specialize in precious metals and energy minerals. We also have significant in-house expertise in industrial minerals, and we've also worked on evolving technologies such as geological storage of carbon, for example. A current snapshot of where we have people on the ground includes these countries, and I think it's worth mentioning that in a lot of these areas we're working for multiple clients on several different projects. So that's Aurum in a nutshell. Let's talk a little bit about what controls success in exploration. The area selection is an important factor, and the types of, this would include factors such as, geological screening criteria, such as whether you have a permissive rock type, the right structural setting, or whether economic deposits have been found in the area in the past. Socio-political and historical dimension would include security of tenure or safety concerns. These two factors depend a lot on the risk that an individual company is willing to take. Some exploration companies market themselves as risk takers, and they're willing to be the first movers in certain jurisdictions or within new belts. Other exploration companies tend to be more risk adverse and explore in regions where the political and social or geological risk is well understood. In a lot of cases, these decisions are taken at a corporate level, and once they're taken, they're a little bit difficult to change. But one thing that you can influence quite directly is the composition of the exploration team that you put on the ground to maximize the chances of success. And I'd like to focus on that element a little bit during this presentation by looking at some of the philosophical aspects of team selection, and also look at a couple of areas where this has proven successful for Aurum in the MENA area. What controls success in exploration? Well, people. It seems like an obvious statement, but what you need is a team in which you have different people with different skills. But most importantly, what you need is that those people work synergistically such that the talent of the group as a whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And of this team composition is a very important factor. And to illustrate this, I'd like to draw on the thoughts of Jay Hodson, former chief geologist with Barrick Gold. He subdivides explorationists into a number of different groups. One group is mavens, or these are the experts, the specialists in certain aspects of exploration, whether it be geophysics, remote sensing, stratigraphy. These are the egghead component, if you like. At the other end of the spectrum, we have doers. These are people whose primary skill is organization. They're the people who pull the team together, who monitor and organize progress to make sure everything is done right. And these are the people who generally distill the ideas created by the mavens or the experts into practical, real-world field situations. Other components of a team are connectors. These are people whose primary skill is communication. They have a very detailed knowledge of exploration, but they seek connections between other specialist groups through their interactions with them. One of their primary skills is facilitating communication amongst other elements of the exploration group. Promoters are people, their core skill is also communication. But whereas connectors facilitate communication within an exploration group, promoters are people who can take quite complicated exploration concepts and communicate that concept effectively to outside groups such as investors. These are all obviously end members. Most explorationists will have qualities of each of these particular groups. Doers, for example, are commonly good connectors, as they take ideas generated by the mavens and distill them into practical field exploration programs. Connectors and promoters will also have shared skills in terms of communication. But one thing I think is important is that if somebody makes a critical contribution to a project, that they're not seen as being lacking in other areas because they don't have skills in those particular areas. Mavens, for example, are commonly poor connectors, and sometimes they can be seen as having poor leadership skills. Connectors and promoters are sometimes viewed as being technically superficial, but what is really important is that there's a good distribution of these core skills amongst an exploration group to maximize the chances of exploration success. This slide just shows key elements on the road from developing a project from an early stage exploration through to advanced stage and onto a mining situation. And what we see in this progression is that certain factors change over as a project progresses, as does their relative importance. For example, if we look at a target, geophysics is something that you would generally use more to define that target, but as you moved on to advanced exploration, this becomes replaced by drilling as the predominant tool that's used. And then as you move on to a mining situation, issues such as geotechnical issues and rock quality become a much more predominant concern. If we combine these two together, we can see that as an exploration program develops from early stage through to advanced and onto a mining situation, different considerations become more important, and we need to draw on different people with different skill sets to help that journey along. But what is really important, we feel, is that the distribution of the core skills within the team remains constant to maximize the chances of success. Another critical part of bringing an exploration team together is the experience of the individual as well as the combined experience of the group. And how long does it take to become an expert? Well, Malcolm Gladwell, in a very interesting book called Outliers, suggests that it takes at least 10,000 hours of dedicated work in a particular field to be considered an expert. That translates to 20 hours a week over the course of 10 years. And what this means is that ultimately it's very unlikely that you will find an individual who is an expert in several fields. But what is important is that the wider the experience that is available to an exploration team, the better the chances of success. And I like this quote from Clarence Day: "Information is pretty thin stuff unless mixed with experience." For me, that illustrates very nicely the relationship between mavens and doers. Doers are people who get out there, they explore and they generate information, but it has to be a two-way communication because you need continued input from the experts to interpret the information, to refine your exploration methodology, and to make sure that collaboratively you maximize your chances of finding a new deposit. So, in summary, what controls success in exploration? We feel it's the right people with key experience and, of course, hard work and perseverance. And it doesn't hurt to have some luck thrown in as well. One area that I use my own personal expertise on many Aurum projects is in the field of quality assurance and quality control. This refers to the methods that are put in place to provide confidence in the veracity of a final assay result. And this is a very important component of all exploration programs, and it's enshrined in every one of the geological reporting controls. The Canadian reporting code, National Instrument 43-101, reports written to that standard must include a statement of the author's opinion of the adequacy of sampling, sample preparation, security, and analytical procedures. And this means that QA/QC covers all aspects of a sample's journey from the core barrel through to the final result that we see appearing on a certificate. And one thing that we like to do at Aurum is to do a full review of all of the sampling cycle. And as you can see, even in a very basic exploration program, this can be quite complicated. And why do we do this? Well, if you notice any peculiar trends in your quality control data, it's very unlikely that you'll be able to identify the point in the sampling stream where a bias or a problem is being introduced unless you understand every stage of how a sample is handled. Most of you will be familiar with most of the quality control techniques used, inserting standards, blanks, duplicates, and umpire samples. Some things that we tend to find on projects is that people put in these samples but fail to follow through on the interpretation of results. Common failings in QA/QC programs include failure to evaluate results promptly, not recognizing the cause of a problem, and also failure to implement corrective actions. And for a QA/QC program to be really effective, you need to act on all of these elements as soon as they become apparent. These are just some of the charts that we use when we're monitoring QA/QC data. There's some interesting examples in here. On the top left, you can see the performance of a standard graphed over time. And we can see here quite clearly a change in behavior. And this is probably related to a change in the nature of the standard itself, or alternatively, a change in procedure at the lab. Well, why are things like this important? Well, most of these early standards were all within recommended limits. But if that standard was under reporting, it's also quite likely that a lot of the rock samples were also underreported. And over the course of a long exploration program, behavior like this could be the difference between a deposit being considered sub-economic as opposed to viable. Another example on the top right is where we took some umpire samples on a deposit. And you can see quite a good correlation at lower grades, but at higher grades there's quite a marked variation. And when we looked at this in some detail, we realized that these samples belong to a certain number of drill holes that defined a subzone within the deposit at which there was a much higher nugget effect. So a good quality control program can actually tell you quite important information about the nature of your deposit. The key ingredient, though, is that the person monitoring that data must have the experience to be able to recognize and make these types of connections. I won't dwell on that slide. That's just some other things that we do routinely on projects in which we're involved. What I'd like to do now is just to touch through some MENA area case studies where Aurum has been involved. This will give you an idea of the geographical spread of where we've worked in the MENA area. This graphic just shows some of the various services that we provided, ranging from geological targeting right up to resource drilling. I'm not sure why Greece is in here, not exactly the MENA area, but we'll skate over that. The Tamnat share-hosted gold prospect was an area that we looked at for an AIM-listed company called Ormond Mining, where they asked us to do a project assessment. Initially, the work we did here focused on detailed geological mapping of the shear zone itself. But when we looked at that mapping in detail and also looked at drill core and some other adjacent data sets, we came up with an interpretation that the structure was dipping underneath a sequence of wadi sediments, and we recommended to the client that we take a more regional approach to try and locate extensions to the mineralization and subparallel structures. And the recommended technique we suggested was to use bulk leach extraction gold sampling from the soil horizons in the area. This was a very successful program that resulted in identifying a host of new targets for the client in the area and adding value to their exploration ground. Another MENA country that we've worked in is Tunisia. Here we worked for a company called Maghreb Minerals, who were exploring for base metals and also for industrial minerals in the north of Tunisia. Our work here primarily focused on the Bojaber lead zinc prospect, but we also did target generation and a number of other Maghreb prospects in the area. This slide just shows the general progression of what we did at Bojaber. We undertook data reviews, we did target generation, we also assisted with drill planning, we assisted with core logging and sampling. We also did some quite detailed studies on the nature of the mineralization, in particular resolving how that mineralization was related to attendant structure. That all led to provision of a geological model which underpinned a subsequent JORC-compliant resource estimate. Excuse me. We've also worked in Saudi Arabia for the Madden Group. Our work here was particularly focused in the north of the country on the Al Jalamid phosphate deposit. The type of geological services we provided here were initial data reviews and targeting, assisting with the drilling program, core logging and sampling. We also had an overseeing role in the QA/QC procedures as well as monitoring that data, and that ultimately led to production of a geological model and a JORC-compliant resource estimate. Another element of our work for MADAM was looking at doing orientation studies to try to define new exploration techniques that could assist with future exploration in the area. This included soil sampling on different fraction analysis in particular. We also did gamma ray scintillometry and also biogeochemistry on the flora of the area. Again, an example where we took our experience from elsewhere and applied it to a new project to add value to the client. This is a project in which we're particularly proud. A group of private investors who subsequently became Mauritania Ventures Limited approached us and asked us to develop an exploration project for them. We regarded Mauritania, the country, as having a strong potential for new discoveries, and we did initial data compilation and data interpretation to identify target areas, and particularly identified areas for iron oxide, gold, copper and uranium mineralization. Following on from defining these areas, we were centrally involved in liaising with the Mauritanian government to secure licenses for the client. Leading on from that, we did local level target generation, and subsequent field work led to the discovery by Aurum Geologists of visible uranium mineralization at economic grades. We really liked this project. We took an initial concept and brought it to a stage where there was actually on-the-ground field work done that discovered new mineralization. At present, the iron oxide, gold, copper potential and field work in the south of the country hasn't advanced, but we hope to get back to this exciting area in the near future. One last example is in northern Sudan, where we worked for a company called Brinsley Enterprises, who are a joint venture between Middle Eastern and North African partners. We provided technical supervision at the Orshab deposit and the exploration that went on there. One critical turning point in this deposit was the Aurum technical team recognized that the style of mineralization was poorly understood. Originally, it was considered to be a gold-rich gossan. However, we reinterpreted it as being a polymetallic, volcanogenic, copper, lead, zinc, gold mineralizing system. And importantly, this showed that the deposit was prospective for additional metals, but also that it was open at depth and along strike. And again, an example where we used our experience to add value to the deposit and also to future exploration potential in the area for the client. So what is the key to exploration success within the MENA region? We think it's people, experience, good management in a well-balanced exploration team in which the talent of the group as a whole is greater than the sum of its parts. This is the philosophy that we adopt at Aurum Exploration Services, and we'd like to think we can provide all three to our clients. They always say you should have a pretty picture at the end of a presentation, so here it is. This is a VMS project that we're currently working on in northern Ethiopia. I'll just point out we have an Arabic version of this presentation which is available at our booth number 540 in the foyer outside, and we'd be more than happy to meet with any of you there. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.